If you've ever been to West Texas,
Yes.
it's kind of dry.
Yeah.
It's all so flat. It's so flat you can step up on the curb, get a nosebleed from the change in altitude. That was one thing my daddy always said about us being raised in Odessa. In 1958, my family was my parents, my paternal grandfather, an older cousin, myself, and my younger sister. Close by, we had relatives, my dad's brothers and their families. And my dad worked for his brothers. He was a butane truck driver. And my mother, before she had met my dad, she had been a career waitress. She was so good at it that she could handle an entire cafe floor by herself. People would drive 2 and 3 hours in West Texas to come and be served by her. There was 15 years difference in their ages. But I'm telling you, it really was a love story. And I was blessed to have them as my parents. We were involved in church. It was not foreign to us. We went regularly. In fact, all the wards went to the same church. We all went to the same schools. When I finally got to high school, one teacher said to me, "Are you the last one? I've been teaching wards for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So we had a real extended family. Plus, we would go back to East Texas, where my dad and granddad were born, for our family reunion. And that was always an adventure. On Labor Day weekend, that was our vacation. I remember the first time I heard about somebody having a vacation. I thought, well, don't they have a family reunion like we do? But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience to be in that family. And little did I know that I would have so many changes in just a few years. Because on June 26, 1960, my dad passed away with a second heart attack. And my mother woke me up, and immediately I went into shock because he was supposed to be coming home the next day. And what went into my heart was, I need help. I don't know what to do. And mother had myself and my younger sister and my grandfather to take care of. And all of a sudden she didn't know what to do. And her friend Faye came one day and said, "Dottie, I want to help you because I sell Stanley Home products and I want you to be a salesperson with me." And my mom says, "Well, I don't know anything about sales." And she says, "I'll teach you." And Faye did. Mother would take us on her sales calls, and we would sit in the living room and do our homework, and Mother would be at the kitchen table talking to the woman and say, "Girl, do you have any coffee?" And the lady would say, "Well, yes." "Well, just sit right there and read those brochures and stuff, and I'll make the coffee." Then she'd see the dirty dishes, and she'd wash the dirty dishes. And then she would say, look under the sink and say, "Well, you need these products right here," and she'd name them out. Then she'd go in the bathroom, she'd clean the bathroom. Then she'd go in the laundry room, she'd clean the laundry room. And she'd vacuum the floor. Well, this took all afternoon. And all these women, at the end of the day, Mother had a large order, but also the woman had sat at her kitchen table and relaxed and enjoyed the conversation. Later on, Mother won being the #1 salesperson in West Texas. And they said, "We're going to give you this honor, but you got to go to the Statler Hilton in Dallas, Texas to receive it." And so for her, that was like going to Academy Awards because she only had an 8th grade education. So there's an 8x10 glossy that I have of all the women who are receiving awards at that convention. And Mother's in the middle, very top row. Down here on the first row, over here in this corner, is Mary Kay Ash.
Oh.
Two women who took their family situation and made the best of it. Life kicked her in the head, in the stomach actually, but when my relatives came and took my grandfather out of her home, and that hurt her because she had taken care of my granddaddy since they were married in 1945. And she did a spiral because she lost her confidence and she didn't have anybody to support her. And she wound up on the same day my dad passed away in 1963, our house burned and she was in it. And again, when they woke me up, I had the same thought, help. I don't know what to do. But loving people in our church gave us clothes. We didn't have anything. They gave us clothes. They fed us. They took care of us. And I went to stay, my sister and I went to stay with an aunt and uncle until we graduated from high school. There's 18 grandkids that my father had, and my younger sister and I are the two youngest. And 5 of us have gone to college, and my sister and I are 2 of the 5, and we had the least chance to go because we went on scholarships and loans and grants, and we worked. Well, I went to Howard Payne University in Brownwood, Texas, and the reason I'm telling that is because that college was a place I could express my faith. Through it all, I had learned I understood that Jesus was available. He is there, he's present, no matter the circumstances. I tell people all the time, who you are is more powerful than your circumstances, especially if you've aligned your life behind biblical principles. So, in college, I got really busy. My first semester, I was carrying 17 and a half hours. I was a freshman yell leader. I was freshman friendliest. I was runner-up for freshman favorite. I was the first freshman pledge of the music fraternity. I was in the musical. I was in the a cappella choir. On the weekends, I was going out and singing in churches. And I remember my grandfather used to tell people that if you're waiting for Forrest, you're backing up. So I got really busy. I really did. And I thought I was doing everything I should be doing. Well, they made you take Old Testament your first semester. And we had a professor at the college who was so brilliant. He was fluent in Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew. And they couldn't hold him in the religion department. So they created a whole different department just for him, called a religious knowledge department. His name was Dr. Tracy. And I didn't have him in classes because I wasn't in that field. I was in the music and education field. But one day I'm running to my Old Testament class, and Dr. Tracy stood to the door of his office. He said, "Forrest, come here." I said, "Dr. Tracy, I'll be late." He said, "No, come here. I need to talk to you." I said, I don't want to be late. Dr. Shields doesn't like it when I'm late. He says, "I'll write you a note." So I come in, and he sits behind his desk, and there is this credenza that goes to the 14-foot ceiling, and all these books. It is packed with books, and none of them are in English. And I sit in front of his desk, and he says, "So, how's your semester going?" And I told him all those things I just told you. And he says, what are you doing that for?" Nobody had ever asked me that question. So I had to come up with something really spiritual. You know? Here I am talking to this learned professor, and I said, "Well, Dr. Tracy, the Bible says, be perfect as God is perfect." He says, "Really? Does it say that?" I said, "I've known it all my life." He said, "You must be talking about the King Jimmy version." He always called it that. And he said, let's see what it really says. And he didn't even look back. He just reached back and pulled out a book and opened it up right to that verse. And he read it in the original language. And I don't know what he said. Still don't know what he said. And I said, okay, what does it say? He says, it says, well, first of all, Forrest, you're in you're in process. You haven't arrived yet. Only God has arrived. But what the verse says is be maturing as only God is mature. When we follow God, He leads us into maturity. And it made my heart still because it's the truth. I didn't have to be busy in that moment. All of a sudden I realized that is a message that God wanted me to hear. That was in 1966. 1968, I went to a conference in New Mexico, at Glorieta, New Mexico, and it was Student Week. And all these preachers that had brick churches and county seat towns would get up and give us 3 points in a poem. And I kind of got bored with that. Until a man walked up to the lectern and he was wearing a priest collar. And he had a black suit on without a coat. His name was Ron Willis, and he was a street minister at Haight-Ashbury. And he says, you might be noticing that I don't look like the average Baptist preacher. Because at Haight-Ashbury, if I wore a suit and a tie, nobody would speak to me. But this right here is a symbol in our society of someone who cares. And I get the opportunity to speak to people that are in very, very dire circumstances. And his message went on for an hour, and I said after it was over with, I said, I'm going to talk to that man. So I walked up there. It was a long ways up there. And I walked up there, and I said, Mr. Willis, can I speak with you? He said, sure, you can. So I spoke to him 3 different times, but I remember the first time we sat down to talk, I'm waiting for something like a real nugget that I can hang my life on. And he says to me, so Forrest, what are you doing to show the love of Jesus Christ? No one had ever asked me that question in all the stuff that I had done. And I really had struggled with trying to answer it. I didn't know what to say. And finally he says, well, what are you doing in college? And I told him all those things. He says, so you're in a fraternity? I said, yes. What's your fraternity doing to show the love of Jesus Christ? I said, well, we have concerts every semester, and we sell tickets. What do you do with the money? Well, we buy blazers. He says, how does that show the love of Jesus Christ? I said, well, on Wednesday nights, I go to a mission over on the poor side of town, and we have punch and cookies, and we sing, songs and things like that. He says, really? Anybody in that group poor? I said, oh, yes. There's one family with about 7 kids. And I drive by their house on the way to the church, and they have a 2-room shack, and they cook in the yard. He says, have you ever thought about showing the love of Jesus Christ to them? And I didn't know where to begin. What would I do? He said, so I suggest that you talk to your fraternity, and y'all get money, and you take it to the father of that family, and you give him the money to support his family. Better still, why don't you hire him to be the foreman on his house and let him be paid to be the foreman to build a room on his house? You think that might show the love of Jesus Christ? And I'm just, my wheels are turning like, wow, that is amazing. So simple, yet I made it so difficult. In asking for help from God, there were always people that were available every time. When I faced what I knew about God and chose to love God, my life began to center. So you see, God loves me through it all. Just because I lost my family. Oh, by the way, my grandfather passed away in 1964, and then my cousin killed himself in 68. So Brenda and I had to go through a lot of loss. But because there were loving people in our lives, that loss began to dissipate, and faith came on, and all of a sudden we learned to express ourselves. Because that's why we're here, is to be as much as we can for God. You see, He sent His only Son. That Son was born of a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He became a teacher. He was crucified. In 3 days He rose, and now He sits on the right hand of God. Someone demonstrated to me one time what it means to love Christ. It's like Christ has you in the palm of His hand, and God has Christ in you in the palm of His hand. Nothing can separate you.
That is so good.
So it is one thing to tell someone you love them, and it's another thing for them to have the experience of being loved.
Yes.
We can talk about love all day long. In fact, we have things like the internet that's full of it. Plenty of content. But what's missing out there is context, and the context is leaving people with the experience of being loved. So I want to share with you a song that came to me that I want it to be a gift to people, because the message in it had to come to me first. I had to heal in certain areas of my life. The title of it is called Take Care of Yourself. Take care of yourself, make time for your reasons, and pick up every cause you can. You'll find on the other side of the causes, there's room in this life for a change. Settle down, buy a book, stack wood for the fire, and with a friend sit alone in the swing. The moments that you share and the cares that are buried calm the heart that was lost in the hurry. Sure, it's all out there, ready for the taking, but if I take, am I sure to receive? And in the going, is there always a coming? Is there never pain when one leaves? But I'll stay in this place, live each day as it comes. And the moments that I share calm the heart that was lost in the hurry. But if you ever need the time, the sitters to spend, you know full well you can do it here. The change is about accepting Christ, accepting God into your life, and making certain that you keep expressing that change with everybody you meet. Thank you.